However, homeopathic development didn't stall out in the 1800s, and so it's continued to be developed since then. So there's an Australian naturopath, homeopathic doctor, Dr. Isaac Golden, who kind of is the pioneer of modern homeoprophylaxis, where he has used homeoprophylaxis instead of vaccination for, I don't know how many tens of thousands of children.
A lot.
And he has documented every one. All his information is published in books. You can buy them on Amazon. And he's still alive. I see him periodically being interviewed on interviews that are posted on YouTube. And so he kind of set this whole thing in motion. And then, American homeopaths started looking at Australia and saying, oh, hey, we should probably be doing that too. So then his work has kind of been carried on and perhaps even more refined. And so then the veterinary community was like, hey, you should be doing that too.
Yeah.
Welcome to another episode of the Crunchy Carnivore with myself, Dr. Jessica Levy, holistic veterinarian, and Melissa Weidenhammer, certified, I was going to say carnivore nutritionist, which you are.
I am a carnivore nutritionist.
Yes,
that works.
Certified canine nutritionist and holistic dog breeder of many years.
Yes.
Today we're going to talk about homeoprophylaxis, which is a way of using homeopathic remedies to help protect animals or our puppies against disease. And so we're going to explain what those homeopathic remedies are, how they work, and how homeoprophylaxis itself works.
So supporters of homeoprophylaxis, basically we purport that it's going to gently educate the immune system. Critics say they don't work at all. And so what we really want to do is bring clarity to what the difference is between homeopathic nosodes versus vaccines, and also to be very, very clear that nobody is saying that they work the same.
No, yeah.
Anybody that truly understands how they work should not be saying that they work the same as vaccines. And so we just really want to kind of dissect that today and hopefully bring a really good understanding of this by the time we're done, so that you can know, is this something that you would like to entertain for your next puppy, or is this something that you're not comfortable with, or whatever it is. There's kind of different places to land. And so I think what's important to start with is let's talk about how vaccines work. I think let's start there, because I think a lot of people don't really know how they work, and they just assume that if their dog is given a shot, they're immediately protected. You call it the magical cloak of immunity. That's not a thing. And so, right. Dr. Levy, can you just, for everybody, just explain the basic, biological process? What are vaccines intended to do?
So vaccines are intended to incite a response from the immune system. So they have all sorts of ingredients, right? There's the virus that we're vaccinating against. There's preservatives, antibiotics, cells from the cell culture that the virus was grown in. Mercury is in dog vaccines. There are chemical adjuvants. And adjuvant is something that is designed to irritate the immune system, because the thinking is that potentially injecting something is not enough. What you want to do is you want to put out a call to the immune system saying, come here and look at this and do something about it. And then, of course, there's red number 40.
Oh, sure.
Which is what makes vaccines pink.
Okay, yeah.
So this whole chemical concoction is injected into dogs in order to induce a response from the immune system that will then create antibodies against the virus and the vaccine. But of course, what happens is you get antibodies against a whole bunch of other stuff as well, because there's all this junk in the vaccine. You get an outpouring of antibodies against the dog's own connective tissue, and the connective tissues are tendons, ligaments, bones, and blood. This is part of the reason why you see injury to cruciate ligaments and, disc disease, and why you see immune-mediated hemolytic anemia and thrombocytopenia after vaccination, because blood is one of the connective tissues. And so giving a vaccine like you said, like I said, it's not the vaccine itself that kind of magically protects you. Now you're safe. The vaccine requires a functional immune system in order to respond to the stuff in the vaccine. Some of the issues that we run into with our patients when it comes to vaccines is that none of us have mechanisms in our body that are designed to remove mercury. Right? There's no scenario in any other part of life where the natural life that we're designed for, where mercury would be injected into your body, this super toxic metal. And so we don't have systems set up to deal with that. And so that is one of the reasons why you can have all these reactions as a result of being vaccinated, including, it can instill chronic disease into your pets. And a lot of that has to do with the mercury content, the adjuvants. Our bodies were never designed to have red number 40 injected into them either.
It's also not the way that we were designed to build immunity.
Oh, exactly.
You don't bypass every natural, the mucous membranes and through the skin. That's how we were designed to gain immunity. We were not, nothing should be, with a needle, under the skin, into the muscle tissue. That's not how we were designed, or how our animals were designed to build immunity either.
Right.
So that's kind of its own.
So basically, like, the immune system doesn't have natural built-in pathways to do that thing, and so that is why vaccines create this kind of havoc in the immune system, because all the components of the immune system are kind of in a state of what's going on? Are you kidding me?
Now, so I do know that I have recently seen, and I don't know how long ago it came out, I think it's pretty new, where there's something, they're trying to come up with cleaner vaccines. And so, like, PureVax is something that I've seen. I think it is only overseas right now. And I think it's only,
it's in the US.
Is it in the US?
Yeah.
And I know it's only for cats at this point.
It's the non-adjuvanted feline rabies vaccine. The issue there is that there might be a 3-year one at this point, but for a very, very long time, the manufacturer had only tested it at 1 year, which meant that you were back to giving your cat a rabies vaccine, albeit non-adjuvanted, every year. And that causes problems in and of itself. The thinking is, well, if you're already immune, then it won't cause any damage, because then your immune system will just say, oh, we know how to deal with that already. But they're not taking into account, like, all the other crud that's in the vaccine. And then, of course, there's the issue that no vaccine is going to protect 100% of the population that gets it. So you get the vaccine and you're like, whew, now my puppy won't get fill in the blank. And the answer is, well, if your puppy had a fully functioning immune system prior to vaccination, which, sorry to say, it doesn't now. Now that it's been vaccinated, it no longer has that. And also, we just don't know. We don't have a way to evaluate the immune system to say, is it a good idea to vaccinate this puppy based on possible outcomes? So at the state veterinary conference a couple of months ago, I went to a lecture about something about adverse events to veterinary vaccines in dogs and cats. And basically, there's no data. There's nobody to report this to. Nobody's collecting this information. The manufacturers aren't particularly interested. And so it's like this great unknown. And because it's unknown, we're supposed to be okay with it.
Ignorance is bliss,
what could happen?
Ignorance is bliss. So really, like, even if you... So the point of vaccines is to create a response so that the body produces antibodies to the specific virus or disease that you're vaccinating for. That's how vaccines are supposed to work. And then, of course, we just kind of extract, and we could keep going on about the damage by all of the other stuff in the vaccines. There's a lot more damage done, I think, than people realize. But I also, and I don't know that... I think this is also a huge problem as to why so many dogs, quote unquote, have allergies. I think creating that response, and then it's like the system is down, and so then they come into contact with a protein, or they come into contact with an environmental thing, and then we have an allergy to something that they wouldn't have an allergy
It's basically like incentivizing the immune system, and then creating this whole uproar in the immune system where your immune system is like, we have to deal with these things that never happen and that we have no pathways to deal with. So your immune system is basically in a state of disarray,
Right.
trying to deal with this new, never before seen threat. And at the same time, you're feeding the dog chicken. And at the same time, the goldenrod is blooming.
Yep.
And at the same time, you go up in the attic where it's super dusty. And so I think that to me rings true. Like that's why you would see some dogs that have environmental allergies and some dogs that are sensitive to certain food items. Because if you catch the immune system at that stage where it is in complete disarray and trying to repair itself, you're going to start having reactions to all sorts of other things. That's why you start having reactions to the connective tissues in your body. The immune system is in such an uproar that effectively you have this army that's been aroused and they are looking for something to attack.
Right.
And they're just like, but they're not being specifically directed. So it's a big challenge. In classical homeopathic education, we were always told that you cannot use homeopathic remedies to prevent disease.
Yeah.
The idea was that only in the face of an epidemic. So basically in an epidemic, let's say something like whooping cough. So, the first couple of children get sick and then a few more get sick, and you talk to your fellow homeopaths and you record their symptoms, and that's how y'all get together and kind of figure out, oh, this remedy is going to be the most important one for this outbreak. And so once you have that remedy, it's called the genus epidemicus, then you could give it to everybody in an attempt to protect all the other kids from XYZ disease. However, homeopathic development didn't stall out in the 1800s, and so it's continued to be developed since then. So there's an Australian naturopath, homeopathic doctor, Dr. Isaac Golden, who kind of is the pioneer of modern homeoprophylaxis, where he has used homeoprophylaxis instead of vaccination for, I don't know how many tens of thousands of children.
A lot.
And he has documented every one. All his information is published in books. You can buy them on Amazon. And he's still alive. I see him periodically being interviewed on interviews that are posted on YouTube. And so he kind of set this whole thing in motion. And then, American homeopaths started looking at Australia and saying, oh, hey, we should probably be doing that too. So then his work has kind of been carried on and perhaps even more refined. And so then the veterinary community was like, hey, you should be doing that too.
Yeah.
Now, many years ago in the 1980s, Christopher Day, who is an English veterinarian, did a study with the kennel cough nosode. The kennel cough vaccines are known to be lousy at preventing disease, but great at spreading it. And so many dog kennels have had issues with a dog coming in that's either got kennel cough or has been recently vaccinated for kennel cough, and then they spread it. Now, it's supposed to be a self-limiting disease where it's like the common cold, where dogs maybe get it 7 to 10 days, it kind of burns itself out, they get better. They don't really require treatment. But I was talking to one of my trainers today, and just from what I'm hearing, it does seem like, I don't know if dogs are weaker or if the kennel cough itself, the bacteria is somehow stronger or what the deal is. But it does seem like it's kind of going on for weeks and dogs are getting sick repeatedly. Some dogs even progress to pneumonia, which it should not be. It should be like an upper airway, same thing, like the common cold. You might be coughing, but it's not like your lungs are damaged or anything like that. So that's where, I don't know if anybody knows exactly what is going on, if it's something like with our modern dogs. I mean, for all we know, it could be cell phone towers and flame retardant chemicals that are weakening our dogs' immune systems. Anyhow, Christopher Day did the study in the 1980s where he took this boarding kennel and basically handed out the kennel cough nosode instead of vaccinating the dogs, and nobody got kennel cough.
Nobody got it.
Yeah. So I don't.
Same thing happened with parvo. They did that in a shelter.
So I don't know if his data was ever published. It was a long time ago. But everybody kind of thinks back to that. And then of course there's the Cuba experience with leptospirosis. So leptospirosis is apparently endemic in Cuba. And with some influence, there was a more naturally oriented health group that during the season, when normally they would have a lot of people coming down with leptospirosis, they actually just handed out the lepto-nosode to all the people in Cuba, and most of the people were protected. They didn't have the level of hospitalizations that they had had in previous years. And it seems that what happened was, I don't know if they did it for 1 or 2 years in a row, but the conventional medical industry kind of caught wind of that and was kind of like, no, we're not doing this. Now, it is true that probably most of the people in Cuba had already had some exposure to leptospirosis, so their systems may have been primed in a certain way. Regardless, it worked. Yeah, and so then you have American homeopaths who started to apply this to animals, and then of course the veterinary community kind of got on board. And so from our experience, it is a valid option. I mean, we haven't used homeoprophylaxis in thousands of dogs, but certainly hundreds with good success. And you know, we're not the only ones. There are other holistic veterinarians and other holistic breeders who are also using homeopathic remedies to protect their puppies.
So let's talk a little bit about, really quick, let's touch on what homeopathy is for those of you who are not familiar, and then we'll talk specifically about what nosodes are and how they can work in a preventative manner. So homeopathy is a system of medicine that was created a couple hundred years ago by Dr. Hahnemann. And really the concept of homeopathy is like treats like cures like. It is done from a more energetic level. And so whereas Western medicine is very, substance heavy, the homeopathic remedies are created with literally nothing but what's referred to as the energetic signature left behind by whatever they started with. So parvovirus, for example, it's basically diluted down over and over and over again until all you have is the energetic signature left in a liquid, and then this is poured over sugar beads, and then it's administered that way. Sometimes it could be a liquid tincture. So it's basically the energetic signature of whatever the original substance was is left with the remedy. So it's completely non-toxic. You're not going to have, negative side effects or anything like that.
You're not going to give the puppy the disease somehow.
No.
So the parvovirus nosode, a nosode is a homeopathic remedy that's made from a disease product. So for example, the kennel cough nosode that Christopher Day used was made from the of a dog with kennel cough.
Sure.
So diluted in homeopathic fashion. The parvovirus nosode is made from the feces of a dog with parvo. So you're getting active virus in that sample. And that's how all nosodes are made.
And so you've got, as far as homeopathic remedies are concerned, you have what Dr. Levy just described, which is a nosode, which is made from a disease material. You have a remedy, which is made from a plant, mineral. It can be, a lot. There's thousands of remedies, and those. So that is a homeopathic remedy. So we have nosodes, we have remedies, and then the last would be a tautode, which is made actually from a vaccine.
Or a drug.
So that's kind of your different terminology within homeopathic medicine, but they're all basically extreme dilutions of whatever you're starting with, put over a sugar bead or in a tincture and administered through the mouth, typically is how they're given. Now, how does a nosode work to prevent disease as opposed to a vaccine? The idea is that when you introduce the parvo nosode, for example, you are introducing the energetic signature of parvo to educate the immune system of what parvo is. It's kind of like teaching the immune system to be at the ready for when it will encounter it in its environment. So it's really to accompany building immunity naturally. The nosodes themselves are not going to create the immunity. It's encountering it in the environment that creates the immunity. What happens is when you give the nosode, it allows the animal's body to be ready for parvo, for example, so that if and when, well, not if, parvo's everywhere. When they encounter parvo in their natural environment, their immune system is very ready for it. And so it's either going to encounter parvo, build natural immunity, and you're never going to see a symptom, or they might get sick. It will probably be a much more mild version than if they didn't have the nosode. And they typically recover very easily, and then they have lifelong immunity from parvo. So that's kind of a quick description about how nosodes work. The difference is you can't give one dose of a nosode and expect the dog to be good. It has to be given repeatedly and relatively close together so that it's always helping that immune system to be ready for whatever that is. So for example, our protocol that we have come up with, through my breeding program, Dr. Levy's practice, you give the parvo nosode every week for 14 weeks. You're giving it once a week. So it's constantly being, in the animal system so that if and when they come in contact with parvo, they're ready for it. And it's been extremely effective as we've used it.
Right, and the thing is, during that time, your puppy is being exposed to the virus.
Yeah.
Because some people think, well, but if I just keep him at home and I don't go anywhere, that's not a really realistic thing to be able to do with a puppy.
And you don't want to do that with a puppy.
And so they are going to go to the groomer, to the training facility, to the vet, to the park in your neighborhood where, guess what? Other people have dogs.
Lots of parvo.
And vaccinated dogs shed parvo for 3 to 4 weeks after vaccination. And so your puppy is going to be exposed to the virus. And so knowing that, you can use homeoprophylaxis to say, okay, baby immune system, here's the electromagnetic impulses that you need to set yourself up so that when you do run into the parvovirus, you can successfully respond to it as the immune system should.
And something that's important to realize too, when we encourage people to use homeoprophylaxis, it is important to know that that's not our only form of prevention. We are talking about building a healthy animal so that they can weather these storms very, very well. They're going to be less likely to get sick, and if they do get sick, they're not going to get as sick. So what does that look like? Keep the chemicals off your dog. Keep it a lower stress environment. Feed them real food like they're meant to eat, and don't be feeding them kibble full of toxins and high amounts of carbohydrates, which is going to hinder their gut, which is going to mess with their immune system. There are other parts we really, really want people to understand. This is really best done in a naturally reared puppy. You don't want to put flea and tick chemicals on and feed this type of food and walk on treated grass and all these things and then give homeoprophylaxis as if it's going to be the end all be all. It doesn't work like that either. Right. You need to create a robust, good, solid terrain within that puppy, and it's done by all of those different factors.
Yeah, and homeopathic remedies in general, I think they educate our bodies. There are benefits to taking homeopathic remedies on a semi-regular basis, either for maintaining health, like even if you don't have health problems. And so at one point, Isaac Golden looked at the children that he had used homeoprophylaxis for, and so he compared vaccinated children to children who were just unvaccinated and to children who were unvaccinated and got the nosodes. And he found essentially that the children who were unvaccinated and got nosodes were better, faster, stronger.
Yeah, they had less.
Smarter.
They just had less issues in general. Yeah, which was super interesting.
Yeah, and so it's part of creating health in your young dogs.
Yeah, I'll also say too, something that I found very interesting, and I have found this to be true, is if you really primarily use homeopathy along with, choosing better options all told, but as your system of prevention and medicine, and that's really all that's used, whether it's children or puppies, as that individual grows up, they respond far better and far quicker to homeopathy than somebody who was not raised that way. And so it really is just, it's quite fascinating when you can look at all these different factors about really how beneficial in so many different ways homeopathy actually is. And so, Dr. Levy, I've had this question come at me a few times on social media. I know Nicole has had to field this question. If you have a dog owner who is feeding kibble, okay, a puppy owner who's feeding kibble, maybe let's say they're doing everything else naturally, but they're still feeding kibble, would you feel comfortable encouraging them to use homeoprophylaxis, or would you say no?
I would still do it.
Yeah.
I would still do it.
Okay.
You think that, like, there's got to be some sort of hierarchy, like, you know, which is worse? I feel like there should be a game show that we make. Vaccines definitely pack a punch. The dogs that I see who live the longest and are typically the healthiest are dogs who are being fed an unbalanced, often a cooked diet of like cooked meat and cooked veggies. And really, like, the secret to success for all these dogs is that their owners don't take them to the vet and they don't get vaccinated.
Okay.
And those dogs live a long time in a state of fairly decent health. And so,
even though the diet isn't quite right, you're saying they still
versus
fare very, very well.
Yeah, versus a dog who is like raw fed, but is still getting vaccinated. I mean, you are somewhat, like, you're kind of trying to moderate the odds of success. Yeah, you're trying to prevent some damage there. But I think, you know, we just have to recognize that vaccines do kind of pack a punch. And so J. Compton Burnett was a homeopath in the 1800s, the late 1800s. And when he wrote his book, Vaccinosis and Its Cure by Thuya, that was when he figured out that Thuya was like the main remedy for vaccinosis. And vaccinosis, I think we brought this up before, the definition of vaccinosis is the slow, steady decline in health that is occurring as a result of having been vaccinated. Not necessarily like the next day, it's not necessarily chronologically close, but it is as a result of having been vaccinated. And so he was the one who coined the term vaccinosis, and also perceived that it wasn't just that your immune system had taken a hit when you got vaccinated or something like that, but that as a result of being vaccinated, the way he put it was, you are blighted. Like, you've been severely injured in some way that is not always obvious.
I think it's important for us to kind of address this from a kind of scientific study perspective, because that can be very confusing to people when they come across this information. So there is, if you look to the conventional veterinary world, they will say homeopathic nosodes do not work. We've done studies, they don't work. And so what we want to do is just talk a little bit about that study, which there was one done with control groups in the late 90s. Well,
it was such a tiny number of dogs.
It was 13 dogs. It was 13 dogs, and quite frankly, most of the puppies unfortunately died in this study. Some were not vaccinated at all and not given nosodes. Some were not vaccinated and given nosodes. And then there was one dog that they called, it was like the control contact dog, which I'm not exactly,
I don't know what they were doing.
I'm not sure exactly what they meant by that. But but here's the point. These puppies were given parvo nosodes, and it was unfortunately given in a way that was not correct. And so the conclusion is, well, all these puppies died that were given parvo nosodes, so the nosodes don't work.
Therefore they don't work.
They don't work. The reality is, you know, like, specialists in veterinary homeopathy were sought out before the study was done. these homeopaths were told how these studies were going to be done, and the homeopath said it's not going to work, and said you're going to lose puppies. Like, that's not going to work. And they decided to ignore that advice and do it how they were going to do it anyway. And so now, unfortunately, we have this one study that was done on 13 dogs in the late 90s, and that is what people look at and say nosodes don't work.
Although people aren't looking at it because the study is no longer available.
Well, it's being written about in articles. It's being referenced.
So this quote about the study that happened is kind of going around the world, but the actual study
you can't
is
find it.
inaccessible.
You can't find it.
Right.
Yeah, we tried.
Because the AVMA journal has deleted all their journal articles prior to 2000, and it was published in 1998. So it is effectively gone. So people are commenting on it without being able to see the study, without knowing where they got the parvovirus, that they made the nosodes from, where they get the nosodes, did they make them themselves, where they got the parvo that was injected into the dogs, or how was it given to the dogs. So all that information is gone. And so from our perspective, all we can say is that this is potentially a poorly designed study.
Yeah.
Homeopathic experts were kind of like, yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
They did it anyway, and now, all this discussion about nosodes not working is like based on this one study that nobody can read.
So what you will find, though, is some of the veterinarians that are kind of midway, they like more holistic practices, but they still do minimal vaccines or something like that. They will at least acknowledge that there is thousands of cases from veterinarians, pet professionals, pet owners that have used homeoprophylaxis very effectively. So they say there's thousands of cases, which is probably way more than that, of anecdotal evidence that show that homeoprophylaxis is effective. But because of this one study, they don't want to touch it.
Right, and so you could also say, well, how come they aren't doing more studies? How come we're not doing studies?
Why aren't they doing more studies?
Yeah, somebody's got to pay for it.
Somebody's got to pay for it, and that would hurt the bottom dollar for some pretty big companies.
Right. Otherwise, it's very easy just to say, oh, but if you don't vaccinate, your puppy might get blah, blah disease.
Fear.
And of course, we don't want our puppies to get sick. And so if that's offered as the only effective way, and then you say, well, what about homeopathic nosodes? Nope, they don't work.
They don't work, yeah. So
we got one option.
So really, homeoprophylaxis is a great option. Vaccines are not 100% effective. Homeoprophylaxis isn't 100% effective. But I will say, just in my little world of breeding dogs, we produced 51 puppies. Okay, so that's way more than their study. But anyway, 51 puppies. And I used homeoprophylaxis for all of them. We only ever had, I think, 2 cases where a puppy got parvo, and they both survived and they were just fine.
Yeah, they were like barely
So
ill.
going off of what my percentage is, I had about 96% efficacy. Okay, I believe when I did the math. It was a little while ago. I might be a couple percent off. But it was basically the same as what the parvo vaccine purports that their efficacy is. So I'm just speaking about my experience. It was just as effective, and none of my puppies died. And Dr. Todd Cooney, who has a great practice, he was conventional, he is now homeopathic, and is very much a proponent for all the things that we talk about. He actually has collected the data, which we will link in the description box below. Please look at it. It is incredibly powerful data. Basically, he kind of, did his protocol a certain way for a little while, got his numbers, then he tweaked the parvo protocol a little bit, and he got to a point where he had 0% mortality.
Right.
0% mortality rate in his puppies that got parvo nosodes and no vaccines.
Right, and we've talked about this before, that it doesn't necessarily mean that no puppy on the planet ever who does homeoprophylaxis will get sick.
Right.
They might get sick, but they have better odds of survival, whereas in the conventional world, they still have a 25% mortality rate for parvo puppies.
So if you want to do homeoprophylaxis, make sure that you're getting your information or your protocol from somebody who truly understands homeoprophylaxis and nosodes and how they work. And know that you really should, you can do it if you're going to feed a processed food diet, but you really should support the animal system in a lot of different ways to create a healthy terrain to go along with HP. But I mean, we've found it to be a wonderful option. But as anybody else says, you know, you have to be comfortable with the decision. You have to know that you understand it and to a degree where you're confident in it and have peace with that decision. But hopefully that brings a little bit of clarity into what homeoprophylaxis actually is and how it actually works.
So the bottom line is that true disease prevention is about creating a robust and functional immune system rather than coming at it from a fear-based perspective. It is possible that there's no such thing as vaccination without damage. And it, you know, it just depends on your personal point of view. Some of us would go to great lengths to avoid vaccinating our dogs.
Hopefully you found this helpful. Hopefully it's brought some clarity to this topic. We'll definitely link some things down in the description below where you can look at some of this information yourself. If you're interested and you do have a puppy or you're going to be getting a puppy and you're interested in doing homeoprophylaxis, Dr. Levy and I have put our protocol together and we have it all set up for you in our stand store. We'll link that below, and there's a guide on exactly how to do it, where to get your remedies, your nosodes. And if you're interested in really creating that whole healthy terrain and you're not really sure how to do it, we have a whole bundle called the Foundations Bundle. We'll link that below, where it teaches you how to keep the chemicals off your dog, how to feed a raw diet, and how to do homeoprophylaxis. So hopefully you check out some of those resources and kind of empower yourself with more knowledge and education and find a good place where you land for the health of your animals. Thank you for joining us for the Crunchy Carnivore on this topic, and we will see you again next time. Thank you so much for joining us. Our goal is always to encourage others to seek out the holistic approach by way of education and empowerment. You can check out our online resources at wellspringhaa.com. You can follow us on our YouTube channel, Wellspring Holistic Animal Academy, and you can also find us on Instagram at wellspring_HAA. We hope that this has been helpful and that you continue with us on your journey to holistic health for your pets. As always, we're here to be unapologetically all natural.